Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining our first Pack eCommerce Fireside chat covering retail and e-commerce fundamentals. This information is extremely important for all of us in this industry and will provide good insights into how retailers and brands operate within that area. Today, we will have Alex, Jeffrey, Lou, and myself, and we'll talk about how retailers operate, what matters the most for brands and retailers, how important is profitability for both, and what role retail media plays in all that. And let's talk about a little bit about 1P sellers or banner sellers. These are used interchangeably and can be called either. That's what we see. Great, good to see you. Jeffrey, could you please talk a little bit about the benefits of being a 1P seller for retailers and Amazon in particular?
So for manufacturers, being a 1P is a guaranteed purchase order pattern, right? From an implementation standpoint, dealing with Amazon becomes exactly like dealing with Walmart. They don't have to change their processes internally to accommodate a 1P client. Doing that, you kind of lose some of the levers that you get as a seller if you're a merchant, because price and inventory, because you sell to Amazon, the price become at the sole discretion of the retailer. So Amazon controls the price. So then therefore the margin and profitability implication as well.
And then would you say there's probably a third one there as well, just in terms of, I guess, lastly, letting Amazon deal with the business, right, itself, and letting that off of your shoulders, off of your plate. You talked about the consistency in purchase orders, the less operational levers, right, they're pulling, and then obviously Amazon dealing with the business. More or less safe to say that those are kind of the three areas that brands would say this model really fits us versus the 3P model.
Correct. And it's also then the nature as well, to the point that you just mentioned of the dealing with the businesses. The bigger the business, Amazon is very much wanting to get that business more integrated into their operation versus having you, or as the manufacturers, having you the operational levers to do so.
Yeah, I think there's it's a really deep financial exercise that has to happen as well if you're making the call between, do I stay 1P, have a hybrid, do I try to go 1P from 3P? You need to really assess, like, where are you as an organization in terms of sophistication from a supply chain and fulfillment standpoint? Because if you aren't prepared to manage shipping at scale from an Amazon business, probably doesn't make sense for you to try to take on those costs that Amazon is absorbing for you today. Or if you do have a really sophisticated supply chain and you do feel like you can handle the fulfillment side of things and probably handle it at a cost that's more effective and efficient than is baked into doing business with Amazon as a 1P vendor, then there's opportunity for you to do that. Now, there's also other fees obviously associated with being a 3P and being a 1P. And so it's a really in-depth financial exercise that you need to go through as a company to really assess whether it makes sense from a P&L perspective to either be one or the other or a hybrid.
I just wanted to talk a little bit about that specifically and how what levers brands pull to maximize revenue and manage their P&Ls today.
So as you think about driving profitability on Amazon, there's two components to that, right? It's number one, like, how much are you selling? More you sell, more you can generate from a profitability standpoint. But that doesn't mean those sales are actually profitable. The second piece of that is how much does it cost you to serve that dollar at that channel. We're talking about Amazon right now, but you could do this exercise for every platform or retailer or fulfillment modality in the industry. And what you're really thinking about is, what are the structural fixed costs I have in serving this business, and what are the variable costs? And so obviously you have some control over all of them. As a manufacturer, you're setting your list costs to Amazon. You have some control over what your internal manufacturing or TMC or SG&A, which your selling general expenses are. But you have a lot of control over the variable components of it, which are a little bit easier to manipulate in a shorter time frame. So those are your trade agreements that you've put in place with Amazon, how much you're investing in coupon and promos, the effectiveness of your coupon and promos, how much you're investing in search advertising, the effectiveness of your search advertising. And so as you think about growing profitability on Amazon, It's really about controlling those variable inputs as best you can and making sure they're working as hard as possible for you to drive revenue profitably, and mitigating any and all leaky buckets. So that can be things like shortage and chargebacks that, frankly, can drag P&Ls down really quickly. That can be things like not having your ASIN SIOC certified if they don't fit within the Amazon's parameters to not be a SIOC. You get credit for having your ASIN SIOC certified. You get dinged if it's not. And so there's a lot of things that you need to consider, but it's really about controlling those variables, and making sure every dollar you are putting in that ecosystem is a working dollar for you that's going to generate some type of shipment in return, and really trying to limit non-working dollars in that kind of ecosystem.
Identify working versus non-working dollars, right? That's very well put. And if vendors that get it, they get it, right? Those vendor managers that are managing the channel properly, they understand those three levers that you mentioned. They understand they need to attack those levers with granularity, understand those variable costs, coupon promos, how your advertising is tracking, mitigating the risk of those gotcha charges that you're speaking of right now. It's also been my experience, and this is why you two are here as the experts, because you have way more than I do, but that a lot of times, there are people and brands that just aren't putting the necessary work and the analysis into actually identifying some of these areas that really are in their control. So talk a little bit on why, what prevents these people responsible for managing the operational side of their businesses and really P&L from, conducting this type of analysis.
So I'll take that one. So
Yeah,
that piece there is the difficulty of getting to the data, harmonized and centralized in one spot. So Amazon, like Alex mentioned, gives you a portal, right? Whether it's Seller Central or Vendor Central, and everything is siloed in different tabs. So being able to, aggregate the information from chargeback on operational performance, having your shipment, having your order units, your page views, your glance views, all your coupon, your promotion, your advertising into one view, to be able to get that granularity of whether or not you're profitable to sell that item, not only to Amazon, so is Amazon making money, but also are you making the margin that your sales target has given you, or your management has given you. So it's the difficulty of getting that data into even a single dashboard. Forget about the recommendation that would come from it, but getting that centralized view is the difficult part here.
Got it. So essentially what you're describing here from an operational standpoint is really, if I can use like an analogy, is almost like an orchestra, right? You may have 5 or 6, we'll call them different instruments, right, of your operational levers that need to be pulled. And individually, these instruments may sound good on their own, right? But everyone knows that oboe sounds a lot better when it's paired with a clarinet, right? So it's like, how do you get that conductor that ultimately brings those instruments together to play harmoniously, to create that masterpiece music, right? In our world, that music is revenue. And technology like PackView is really that conductor that allows you to tell those musicians and instruments how to play together. Is that more or less what you're saying?
Yes, I would agree.
Yeah, getting the data there in one place is a gigantic problem that is just now being solved in the industry. The next step is like, what the hell do we do with that? Right? Mm-hmm. Fantastic. Now I've now got it. Now can I action that data? Now bringing the data in one place can start to unlock insights and analytics that you didn't even understand before. For instance, being able to overlay execution of DSP with buy box ownership. So we already talked about working and non-working dollars. Well, working dollars can turn into non-working dollars really quickly in areas that we all assumed were working. So if you're running DSP advertising and you're running them on ASINs you don't own the buy box on, that working dollar now just really quickly turned into a non-working dollar. Those data sets have never been connected before in the industry. And I think we're kind of pioneering what that looks like and being able to see those two together. Then comes the actionability. We work with manufacturers and clients that have portfolios that are 20, 30, 40,000 ASINs. And while they may not be promoting all of them, they could be promoting 6,000, 7,000 of them. That's an impossible task for a human to understand. What ASINs am I promoting? What do I not have buy box ownership on right in this moment? And then even identifying that is a problem, but now then going in and maybe manipulating several thousand campaigns to reflect that is also an issue. Now that you've got the understanding that's happening right now, the magic is taking advantage of that. And I think that's what we're really focused on delivering for clients, is the unification of that data to really unlock insights, but then now taking those insights, turning it to action, which then helps people drive profitable incremental volume that leads to share growth within the sandbox that they want to. And I think that's the exciting thing that we're just kind of on the cutting edge of in the industry that'll have a really big impact over the next 12 to 18 months.
Totally. And like the educational process of really showing some of these brands why that's important, right? Because there, again, a lot of people get it and understand that cohesiveness, using the insights and the actual data to then drive the best growth strategies. A lot of people are just kind of understanding that this is the two steps that need to be married together. And PackView Commerce really is taking that step in helping people operate all areas of their business in the most profitable. Very well said, and a great teaser of what's coming ahead as we get into that topic. But as we talk in operational tactics, and I feel like a lot of times we have a tendency to silo operations versus like retail media, right? We think of them as two different worlds, but as you mentioned, they obviously should be colliding pretty frequently, if not daily. But one of the most important operational tactics is forecasting. And so let's really break this down in a rudimentary way, right? Elementary, my dear boy Watson, as they'd say. Why is forecasting important, and how is it done by most manufacturers today, Alex?
There's two main areas of forecasting, both equally important. The first one is forecasting your own consumption, then also anticipating your competitive consumption within your category, so you can understand, do the plans that you have in place and what you've built translate to whatever you have defined as winning for your portfolio. That's typically defined as share growth. It's really hard to understand whether your plan is going to generate share growth if you haven't forecasted where your consumption is going to go and where your competitors' consumption is going to go. So that's just an underlying business fundamental that you need to understand. What I have in place, the resources I have secured, are those sufficient to deliver what I've defined as success, or what my company has defined as success at the specific retailer? So that's kind of the first big one. The second one, equally important, is leveraging the same type of forecasting to drive demand planning and manufacturing principles. A manufacturer is often using signals from the retail team or the commercial team to anticipate the ordering demands from that retailer. Then in turn, that informs and influences everything from what materials they acquire and when they acquire them, to what type of line time they have allocated within the manufacturing plant, because not every SKU is running on the same line, and multiple SKUs run on the same line, and that needs to be allocated. If I ran 80% of this day on this SKU or ASIN, and now I'm going to run the rest of the day on this SKU, this ASIN. And then secondly is then the allocation of what you make, because Amazon's probably not the only one ordering product from you. So your demand planning team is using this data from the retail team to understand, how much do I make, when do I make it, and am I making enough to fulfill the orders I'm getting from Amazon to Target to Walmart to Dollar General to Piggly Wiggly, et cetera, et cetera. Now the challenge with that is when the accuracy and the time of when those orders are going to come are significantly off. And the reason for that is most manufacturers are trying to get significantly more efficient in manufacturing, move towards things like just-in-time manufacturing, where I'm making the product right before I need to ship it. I'm not holding several weeks of inventory in my own warehouses, which then obviously has an impact as you report to the street, specific times, et cetera. And so what they're relying on is those insights of how much do I exactly need to make to meet the demand from my retailers. When that accuracy is significantly off, you then have a couple challenges. Maybe you made too much. If you made too much, now you're sitting on inventory yourself. You have carrying costs. That's a negative impact to your own internal P&Ls. Then if you make too little, there's a whole other set of problems you now have. Who do I cut? Do I give Target 100% of what they requested and cut Amazon order? Do I cut each of them equally? There are customer agreements that are in place on how much you're fulfilling and how well you've done that in regards to like JBP agreements. You have to consider that. And then oftentimes, if you cut retailers short, you incur fines. And so it's this vicious cycle of I forecasted incorrectly. Amazon ordered more than what I thought. I wasn't able to fulfill it. Amazon didn't get what they wanted. They then fined me. Then I had less inventory. Then I sold less. And it's just nasty cycle. And so forecasting is really the foundation of any healthy business in North America, around the globe, particularly. How much am I going to sell? Is that winning? And then that exact forecast feeds my demand planning team to make sure that I've got the inputs required to hopefully make as much as I need when I need it and drive efficiencies there and not incur fines and charges, et cetera.
So well said, all of it. I mean, and I think, again, it sounds a bit rudimentary, but forecasting at the end of the day is the foundation of a successful business, and really, really well put. Was there anything you'd add to that, Jeffrey?
So the one piece that encapsulate for a manufacturer how important forecasting is for the supply chain organization. The one metric that everyone tries to do is what Alex was saying, is safety stock. So the safety stock percentage needs to be the lowest possible, because that dictates how much inventory they hold. So if you forecast well, demand planning team does their work well by allocation for each retailer, and therefore can minimize their safety stock. So that's the one metric that if you forecast well, that results in safety stock lower percentage, and that is representing for large manufacturers like millions of dollars a year. So that's why the importance of forecasting is essential, from the consumption piece that Alex mentioned all the way to the demand planning on manufacturing.
Yeah, I think that there's that nuance that I want to make sure everyone understands. There are two forecasts. There is the consumption forecast, and then there is the PO and shipment forecast. Yeah. In a perfect world, and everyone would be a hell of a lot happier, and our lives would be easier, and our jobs would be better, PO and shipment would directly correlate to consumption. If Amazon was selling 100 units a week, Amazon would order 100 units a week, and everybody would be happy. Demand planning would be happy. Sales team would be happy. Everyone's P&Ls would be happier. In reality, consumption and PO and shipments and purchase orders do not correlate directly. And the reason for that is PO and shipment orders are a culmination of consumption or anticipated consumption plus or minus change in inventory position. And that's where people really struggle with and don't get deep enough and make the right assumptions to inform where the POs are going to come into place. So if you have the sharper you can get in your forecast, the better starting point you have. The next step, and frankly, the more challenging step, is then understanding where Amazon is moving with your inventory and at what point are they going to make a jump back to where they were. So if Amazon typically holds 3 weeks or 3.5 weeks of inventory on your items and starts to pull you down to a week or a week and a half, like many manufacturers are literally right now today, then they undership consumption. You sold 100 units a week, but maybe you only shipped 80 to 90% of that consumption. That's because Amazon was pulling their inventory holding position down. Now, the moment they decide, I want to jump back up and hold that 3 weeks or that 3.5 weeks, you then have a significant overshipment of consumption. So your demand planning team can't rely on just the consumption forecast. They need the help from the sales team to understand consumption plus or minus change in inventory position equals net PO and shipment forecast, which is really what they care about. And so that's the big wild card today that everybody struggles with Amazon, and what we're really trying to help clients really understand and have some at least intelligent assumptions as to what Amazon's going to do with inventory. No one knows at any point in time. Now we can take some data in the past and take some really smart assumptions moving forward to help refine that and get sharper. But that's the big challenge piece. I want to make sure everyone understands there's two levels of forecasting. Both are equally important because you can't have one without the other.
Right. And again, just getting the visibility, right, to that information so we're not falling for that quote unquote fool's gold, right? Because we could be thinking these are going well. In reality, we get a gotcha like that. And no one can control Amazon, but you can control what you can control and prepare in the best possible way. Great. I think that puts a nice little button on that, little bow on that, and excellent. So, let's transition now into P&L. That's the name of the game for any VC seller, any first party seller. You're doing it to make money. You're doing it for visibility. What are the most important business attributes for consumer brand manufacturers, Alex?
From a manufacturer lens, there's a couple. One of the first challenges, there's a couple different profitability metrics that float around the Amazon ecosystem, and they're all measuring different things. So you have net PPM. Everyone knows what net PPM is, which is Amazon's how much they sell it to the consumer for minus the cost of goods sold plus your trade terms that you've agreed to, net PPM. Everyone understands that, how it's calculated. Everyone's generally aligned. That's what JBPs are often negotiated against. The problem is that's not actually what Amazon is operating off of internally from a profitability standpoint. And secondly, that is not reflective at all of a vendor's profitability. The vendor, actually, frankly, in the vendor's P&L doesn't actually matter what the price to the end consumer is, because the vendor or manufacturer has already sold that product to Amazon at whatever list cost that they provided it to. And that's what we typically call PCOGs when we talk the business. Now, the actual cost of goods sold for the vendor is a whole other metric, which is how much did it cost for me to manufacture this product, any transportation costs associated with getting it there, plus any SG&A, selling and general administrative expenses that your finance team applies to the creation of said ASIN. That is a brand's internal cost of goods sold. So now you've got, what did I sell it to the retailer for? My internal cost of goods sold, and then all of the variable components that need to be overlaid. And this is what Amazon doesn't give vendors credit for. So promo and coupon expenses. Amazon passes that through to the consumer. You ran a $2 coupon, I discounted $2 to the consumer, you paid me $2, it's a wash. No, the vendor paid the $2 and there wasn't any discount on from like a list cost. So that's an important factor that needs to be considered in a vendor P&L. And then there's all your trade agreements that you have in place. And then there is search advertising. Amazon doesn't give you credit for search advertising or P&L. That is a very real line item for a vendor's P&L. And so all of those things should get down into, a vendor's net cost to serve or net profitability at a retailer. And that's the critical metric for a brand to have. Now, the question is like, how do you influence that, right? And profitability and where it's headed is really a culmination of three things for you when you're managing a business at a retailer. First is mix. What am I selling? I make more money on certain items in my portfolio. So if I'm selling $100 and I have 5 ASINs, how much of that $100 does each ASIN represent? I don't make the same money on those ASINs. I'd like to push that mix towards ASINs I make more money on. Second is spend efficiency. So can I reduce the cost of those variable expenses like trade, promo, coupon, and search as a percent of my shipments to then in turn drive profitability? And then lastly is shipments and inventory position at Amazon. If you sell a lot, but Amazon doesn't ship what you consumed and they undership consumption versus last year, that's a P&L drag for a manufacturer because they just didn't actually sell what they actually sold to Amazon. And so there's several underlying components there that we just talked about, right? But it really breaks into those three things that you're running with control. Mix, what am I influencing? I'm selling on Amazon. Spend efficiencies. How do I get promo, coupon, search advertising, trade terms as a percentage of shipments more efficient than a year ago? And thirdly, what are the shipment and inventory positions that Amazon is in? And so there's some odd nuance there. And I think there'll be some questions on as a percentage of shipments and why I'm alluding to that. If you have, let's use promo and coupon, everybody can kind of relate to that. If your promo and coupon spend was $100 last year, but this year it's $150. So your promo and coupon spend's up 50%. There's a world that that's not actually a drag to your P&L, and that could be a profitability help. And where it is how does that happen in relation, or what is that level in relation to my shipments? If I spent $100 last year in promo and coupon to drive $200, it was 50% of my shipments. This year I spent $150 on coupons and I spent 50% more, but my shipments are now $450 then promo and coupon spend as a percentage of my shipments is actually only 33% now. So now I've actually drove efficiency in my P&L. So it's all related to how much did that manufacturer actually sell to Amazon and how much were the variable costs associated with generating those dollars. And so there's a whole lot there. But it's there's a lot going on.
It's all good. No, it's a lot. And it's all good. And that's exactly why we're recording this, right? But I think like ultimately what you gave us some very detailed examples of why brands are looking to PackView to help them solve for incremental revenue, profitability, and overall market share growth, and how all of those levers really do tie together to create a successful 1P and vendor business. And I'm sure, and I'm sure Alex is happy to field any questions at any time about that. Cool. All right, so let's move on a little bit here because you talked about profitability quite a bit from the vendor side, and I think that's great. And at the end of the day, that's what vendors want, and that's what brands want us to be profitable. But if we're being really honest here, Amazon, right? This is their playground, and we're all playing on it. And at the end of the day, the most important thing is for Amazon to be profitable. So talk to me a little bit about the, potential ramifications of you having a non-profitable product on Amazon.
Yeah, so that's the piece of the P&L, right? Alex mentioned the net PPM amount, right? So when Amazon does not make any money on a product, they usually crap it. So it means can't realize a profit. And like Alex mentioned, from a definition standpoint, right, they look at how much they sold the product at. They remove the cost of goods sold. They take out the trade, which is the money that you give Amazon to be on their platform. It's similar to the 3P side, right? There are co-op fees, there's marketing fees, shipping allowance, and damage allowance. And then you also subscribe promotion and coupon and advertising. Exclude advertising because it's a separate P&L at Amazon. So once you remove all those costs, and if Amazon sells this product less than what they purchased minus those costs, then they're losing money on that product. And that's at that time that because they lose money, then your item becomes currently unavailable and or your 1P offer just disappear. So, and that also has a ramification that we all know on the call is the advertising component of it, right? Because if Amazon is not making any money on that product, your ASIN becomes ineligible for any type of advertising, right? And that's why you have on the ad side ineligibility. The reason why a product is being crap is multiple, right? Because Amazon doesn't realize a profit and or they price match with another vendor. So all that dynamic that was put in place during annual vendor negotiation goes out the door because now the price that Amazon was planning on selling the product, they price match, and then they start losing money. Also other implication, right? If you manage this P&L correctly, you could start optimizing your advertising and other promotional activity like Alex was mentioning, right? So that's why managing that profitability, both from the vendor side, meaning Amazon, but also from the manufacturing side, being the brand X, right? So it's because they will manage that efficiency or that profitability well, then they could maximize the top line sales, so the incremental sales for the retailer, while maintaining that profitability because they are profitable with Amazon. Then they can conserve their margin, right, which is the P&L side of the manufacturer. And the goal, as you mentioned earlier, is market share, right? Whether you're in CPG and or in the phone manufacturing like Apple and Android, right? They want to cover and sell the most product to the available clients, right? So they measure that through market share.
And the other interesting I'll add is there's also this hidden profit metric at Amazon that's called CP, or contribution profit, which is a step deeper than net PPM, which is what they give you visibility to as a vendor. CP then also pulls out Amazon's internal costs to fulfill that dollar. So shipping and handling expenses then come into play. And the challenge that you really have as a vendor is you don't have any visibility to that. And so Amazon's operating in the background off a method you actually don't see. And you don't truly know the actual input costs associated with it. So you can take a guess as to Amazon's internal shipping and handling costs for your product based on how much it weighs, its dimensions, whatever, agreement that you think Amazon sweetheart deal got with their shipping provider and how much they pay their people in their warehouses, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But in reality, no one actually knows what that is, and Amazon doesn't tell you it. And so they're operating off of and crapping products out off of a metric that you don't actually know what it is or have visibility to. And you can actually get penalized in certain areas if you aren't paying attention to the item details when you upload, products on Amazon. There's all the time, Amazon will change the recorded dimensions of people's ASINs in the Amazon system. Even if this box is 2 by 4 by 4, and all of a sudden someone in an Amazon manufacturing facility remeasures that box and they get an incorrect reading of 2 by 5 by 5, that extra inch in those dimensions now boosts the shipping and handling cost that the system is calculating behind the scenes associated with delivering your products. And so it's critical that you monitor all those details in the background to make sure that you don't have any errors there. And so that's this other just wild card in the industry right now on the 1P side of things, is trying to solve for CP, because that's what Amazon's ultimately making decisions off of, and you don't have access to it. So that's a challenge for manufacturers in general.
How do you throw a dart at a targetless board, right? More or less. So and getting that type of visibility. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, we're doing some of this work right now. Jeffrey and I are working with our engineering teams to help build some models that just try to make assumptions relative to what those inputs are. Now the challenge is, right, is everyone's probably going to have a little bit of a different answer. If we talk to one manufacturer versus another manufacturer and we talk about, here are the assumptions we've made in regards to how much it costs to ship your item, someone may nod their head yes, someone else may say no, I don't actually think that's right, I would make this assumption behind the scenes. And so it's a challenge because it's a set of assumptions on many different things that you don't actually know the answer to. So as best you can do is work with your finance and your product supply teams to try to put some assumptions in place that you feel best about. And generally, you will be hopefully relatively close, but they won't be exact. And so there's no clean answer for that, Lou, ultimately. And the only answer would be Amazon to tell everybody what those metrics actually are, and that's not going to happen.
That's not going to happen. But the control is, right, is having visibility, is being able to prepare, is being able to look at historical performance, and then ultimately say, let's make the best educated guess and protect what we can and mitigate those risks. So we can't control what they're going to do. Well said. So I guess, if I'm summing all this up, how do 1P sellers increase their profitability? It sounds like, A, minimize trade allowances, right? Understand what that looks like. Minimizing those chargebacks or leakages through consolidated reporting and visibility and how that affects your bottom line. Optimizing your advertising performance by product to ensure maximum incrementality, and really eliminating manual workflows where possible, decreasing ACOS, and then ultimately increasing positive customer reviews and experience, which we haven't really touched on yet as we get into the advertising and quality side of things. But does that more or less sum it up, or am I missing anything? Would you add anything?
No, I think that's, without going too deep in each of those areas, I think those summarize those top level areas.
As we're wrapping up here, and as we're transitioning into the final topic, which is really the marriage of commerce and ads, what does best in class execution look like, Jeffrey?
I'll defer to Alex on that one if you don't.
Alex, okay, sounds good.
Sure. Yeah, so we've already discussed the linkage of data between the two, and there's a ton of value in that in and of itself, right? You can start to think about ASIN level profitability encompassing all of those margin pressure inputs that we just talked about. That's one component. It's connecting predictive inventory indicators rather than currently today a deprecated inventory metric, soon to come back, but still a static reactionary metric that's available in the ads API. Instead, using a predictive inventory indicator of where's your inventory headed rather than where it is today. to things like content scores of ASINs, to rating and review sentiment. Can you get ahead of trending negative consumer sentiment on your products? All of those things are just almost brought to life by connecting the two data sources together. Tremendous value. Now, where it gets really tricky, and will be a journey that we'll go on together with clients, is even if you get that data there, most manufacturers aren't structurally designed and from an organization standpoint to even effectively capture that opportunity that you've now created with the marriage of those data sources. And that is a fundamental problem that all manufacturers of shapes and sizes are trying to solve right now. We're in conversations every day with manufacturers on, how do I design my org? Do my hands-on keyboard teams sit in sales in my commercial team, or do they sit in a brand team? Who owns the strategy? Is it a brand leader? Is it a sales leader? Is it a media person? Is it my agency that's not even in my organization and has never even met my sales team most of the time? And so there's this underlying dilemma of the data is not there. Now it is, cool, solved. But now it's, how do we bring the people together to leverage it in the best way possible? And bringing them together is one challenge. Getting them to align on what you want to do is another challenge, because if someone sits in a brand organization versus a sales organization, even within the same company and the same brand, I promise you they have different deliverables and different priorities of what they're solving for. And so you then have to kind of mitigate that. And then that's
how hard is that conversation though if everything's siloed on its own, right? Because then it's like, if it's everything together, now you can at least start to see, okay, I get it. I get why this is your priority. And this is my mind. We can have those productive conversations, right?
I know one build on this is each team, even though it's still siloed, but everyone is operating on that single data layer, they're able to take the same action and have the same information to execute, right? Versus, hey, the sales team is pulling one report, the advertising agency is pulling another report and take different actions because they don't look at the same data on the same time frame or same, is it PCOGs or is it order revenue? So this is one piece that eCommerce or PackView overall solved by creating a single tool, single platform, single data layer for each team to execute effectively independently as well.
Yeah, excellent. And I think it really comes back to like this analogy, right? And if you think of that just really basic analogy, and I speak in analogies because like as a sales is my native language, it's what I grew up in, right? I've been doing it for 10 plus years, right? But this is what speaks to people. They can visualize that, they can start to understand it. And if you really think of your Amazon operations as that orchestra, lots of individual instruments, all making their notes and sounds on their own, they can sound good, right? They can sound good, they could be profitable, you can think we're having some success, but it's not really until when you bring those instruments together in harmony and with precision, that's when you can really start to create those beautiful works of art, right? In our world, that work of art is increased revenue, increased profitability. Your operational legs are your orchestra, so are your advertising legs. PackView is that conductor that then allows your orchestra to come together and play music harmoniously, right? And I think that's what we're getting to. Now, I realized this session was not a lot of, this is why PackView is great, this is what PackView does. What this first session is about is understanding what the problems are that vendors are facing. So in our next session, what we're going to do is we're going to dive into the 5 pillars of e-commerce specifically, with very specific issues that people are, problems that they're solving today. We're going to talk about why it's a problem, how it's being solved today, why brands are choosing PackView. And then our third session is going to tie it all together with you actually seeing this in the interactive demo. So you know what the foundation is, you understand what the problems are, and then you're like, I get it, I see it all coming together, how they're doing it today versus how they were doing. But otherwise, we thank you for attending this very first session. Your feedback is warranted and wanted, so we can improve these as they go along. Alex, Jeffrey, thank you for your time and your expertise in this. Collaborating with Victor and I know how busy you are, but hopefully we didn't make it too much of a chore for you.
No, it was fun. Thank you.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you all for joining, and we'll see you next time.
Okay.